Go ahead and dim those lights. Switch on a fan if you want that authentic desert wind whistling through the gaps in your cabin walls. Get comfortable in your bed, which, let me remind you, does not have scorpions in it, probably. Let's pause for a second and think. Have you ever wondered what it was really like to navigate the cultural powder keg of the frontier? Did cowboys actually understand the politics of the various native tribes, or were they just winging it and hoping not to die? How did you tell the difference between a friendly greeting and a declaration of war when you didn't speak the language? What do you do when you accidentally become best friends with the daughter of the most powerful chief in 3 territories? Could you survive being the only neutral party in a conflict where both sides had legitimate grievances and really good aim? And most importantly, if 500 warriors surrounded your property at dawn, would you assume it was good news or start writing your will? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in the New Mexico territory. The year is 1880. You're a cowboy trying to mind your own business on a modest ranch. The sheriff's son is a entitled nightmare who thinks his father's badge makes him untouchable. And you're about to make a choice that will either get you killed by sunset or make you a legend by sunrise. Good luck. Chapter 1. Your ranch on the edge of everything. Your ranch sits in that awkward geographical sweet spot where 3 different power structures meet and nobody's quite sure who's in charge. The U.S. government claims this land on paper that the Apache never signed. The local sheriff runs things like his personal kingdom, and the Apache remember when all of this was theirs and no one had to ask permission to water their horses. You, meanwhile, just wanted affordable land and made the questionable decision to settle where affordable meant contested by multiple armed groups. Every morning you wake up and wonder which flag you're technically living under today. The property itself spans about 40 acres of scrubland that wouldn't impress anyone from back east. The grass grows in stubborn patches, the kind that stay yellow-brown even after rain. Mesquite trees dot the landscape like arthritic old men, their branches twisted into shapes that suggest they've given up on growing vertically and decided to just spread sideways out of spite. You've got sagebrush, tumbleweeds that drift past like unemployed wanderers, and rocks, so many rocks, generations of rocks, apparently having family reunions in your soil. Your cabin is 12 by 16 feet of optimism held together with adobe, hope, and whatever timber you could afford after buying the land. The roof is decent. You checked it obsessively during the first monsoon season. The walls are thick enough to keep out most of the heat during summer and most of the cold during winter, which means you're only moderately miserable year-round instead of catastrophically so. There's one window facing east to catch the morning light, and a door that swells when it rains and requires a firm shoulder to open for 3 days afterward. The barn is slightly larger than the cabin, which says something about your priorities. Or maybe it says something about the previous owner's priorities. Since you inherited it with the property, it houses 3 horses who seem perpetually skeptical of your decision-making, 2 milk cows with attitudes, and a collection of chickens who've organized themselves into what you can only describe as a gang. They have a leader. She's missing an eye and rules through intimidation. But the real prize, the reason you bought this particular 40 acres of disputed territory, is the well, 20 feet deep, lined with stone, producing cold, clear water even when everyone else's wells are serving up liquid mud. You didn't dig it. It came with the property. Probably built by someone decades ago who understood this land better than you do. Maybe Spanish settlers, maybe Apache, maybe someone else entirely who's been forgotten by history. Whoever they were, they knew what they were doing. That well doesn't run dry, not in August when the sun turns the land into a skillet, not during drought years when the river 20 miles south stops being a river and becomes a suggestion. Water is currency out here, more valuable than gold, more essential than bullets, more sought after than whiskey. A reliable well makes you wealthy. In the only way that matters, you won't die of thirst. It also makes you interesting to everyone within riding distance who might also prefer not to die of thirst. Some nights you sit on your porch, 3 wooden planks you optimistically call a porch, and watch the sun set over land that can't decide who it belongs to. The sky turns orange and pink and purple, colors so beautiful they seem like an apology for the harsh reality of everything beneath them. The temperature finally drops below hellish. The horses settle in the corral. The one-eyed chicken stops terrorizing her subordinates. And you think, this is mine, sort of, legally speaking, on paper. Chapter 2. The Water Situation. Water in the desert isn't just valuable, it's the entire economy. The currency, the religion, and the law, all rolled into one. Your well is one of the few reliable sources for miles, which means everyone wants access to it, and nobody wants to pay for the privilege. You've got the U.S. Army wanting to water their horses, Apache families needing to fill their containers, local ranchers who think proximity equals ownership rights, and you, trying to figure out if generosity will make you a saint or a target. Spoiler, it'll make you both. Simultaneously, in ways you can't possibly predict yet. Let's talk about what water actually means out here. Back east, water is something that falls from the sky with annoying regularity and makes your boots muddy. It comes from pumps in the town square, from rivers that actually flow year-round, from wells so shallow you practically trip over the water table. Nobody fights wars over water back east. Nobody shoots their neighbor over creek access. Water is just there. Out here, water is the difference between your cattle living until market day or becoming expensive jerky on the hoof. It's the difference between washing your face once a week or once a month. It's the reason settlements exist where they do and die where they don't. When someone says they'll see you in hell, they're referring to a place that's probably better hydrated than New Mexico territory in August. Your well produces about 15 gallons an hour, which sounds like a lot until you start doing the math. Your 3 horses drink about 10 gallons each per day. The 2 cows need another 15 between them. You personally require, if you want to avoid kidney stones and death, about a gallon for drinking, another for cooking, and let's be honest, you haven't had a proper bath in 3 weeks, so add another 5 gallons if you ever want to smell like something other than a saddle blanket left in the sun. That's 55 gallons just for your immediate household. The well can theoretically provide that in about 4 hours of steady drawing. Theoretically, assuming you spend 4 hours of every day cranking a bucket up and down, which you do, because the alternative is dying, which seems worse. Now add in visitors. The Army patrol comes through maybe once a week, 6 soldiers, 12 horses. That's another 120 gallons they'd like access to. Thank you very much. For God and country. They're always polite about it. We'd appreciate your patriotic cooperation, while their hands rest casual-like near their sidearms. You've never actually said no to the Army, mostly because you enjoy being alive and unshot. Apache families pass through less predictably but more frequently. Sometimes it's a woman with children, filling clay vessels to carry back to a camp you can't see. Sometimes it's hunters, men who materialize out of the landscape like they were always there and you just weren't paying attention. They don't ask permission exactly, that would imply you have authority to grant it, but they do acknowledge your presence with nods and occasional offerings. a rabbit haunch once, some dried berries, items that say, "We see you." We recognize this exchange without getting into the complicated politics of who actually owns what. Then there are the neighboring ranchers, and this is where it gets awkward. They believe that since their land is near your land, and your well serves your land, clearly the well should serve their land too. It's logic that makes sense if you don't think about it too hard. Some offer to pay. Most offer to help out around your place in exchange, which is code for, "I'm not paying cash, but I'll pretend this is bartering." One guy, Caldwell, just shows up and takes water, daring you to stop him. You haven't stopped him yet. You're still deciding if that makes you generous or cowardly. Probably both. Chapter 3. The Sheriff's Son. Problem. Let's talk about the sheriff's son. Let's call him Dalton. Dalton is what happens when privilege meets zero consequences, meets a personality that peaked in cruelty at age 12 and never evolved. His father's badge means Dalton can terrorize locals with impunity. He's not smart enough to be truly dangerous, but he's protected enough that his stupidity has teeth. He rides through town like he owns it, which technically his father does, administratively speaking. Everyone hates him, everyone fears him, and everyone knows that crossing him means crossing the only law for 100 miles. Tonight, you're about to discover what happens when doing the right thing means doing the stupid thing. Dalton is 23 years old and has never faced a real consequence in his entire life. Not when he broke the schoolteacher's window at age 10. Not when he shot old Mrs. Henderson's dog at 15 because it barked at him. Not when he started a fire in the livery stable at 19 that nearly burned down half the town. His father, Sheriff Benjamin Reeves, has spent 2 decades smoothing over his son's disasters with a combination of threats, bribes, and creative interpretations of territorial law. The result is a young man with the confidence of someone who's earned respect and the competence of someone who's never had to. It's a dangerous combination, like giving a loaded weapon to someone who thinks gun safety is a suggestion for other people. Dalton travels with 2 friends, and we're using the term friends loosely here. They're more like remoras attached to a shark, benefiting from the protection his father's position provides while enabling his worst impulses. There's Carl, who laughs too loud at everything Dalton says, and Pete, who's quieter but meaner, the kind who suggests things in whispers and then watches them happen with dead eyes. Together, they form a roaming band of consequences-free cruelty that sweeps through redemption like a periodic plague. Their favorite activities include drinking at the saloon and not paying, because who's going to demand money from the sheriff's son? Harassing anyone they perceive as weak or foreign or different, because power unused is power wasted, and riding out into the countryside to terrorize isolated settlers, because boredom is the same as justification when you're 23 and armed and your father has made it clear the law bends around you like light around the sun. You've seen Dalton exactly 4 times before today. Once in town, where he knocked over a merchant's apple cart and laughed while the man scrambled to pick up his inventory from the dirt. Once from a distance, where you watched him and his friends chase a Mexican family's wagon, firing pistols in the air and whooping like it was the funniest thing they'd ever done. Once at the general store, where he stood too close to the shopkeeper's daughter and made comments that turned her father's face red with impotent rage. And once riding past your property, where he stopped long enough to eye your well, your horses, your cabin, like he was taking inventory of things that weren't his, but could be. if he felt like it. Each time, you did what everyone else does. You looked away. You minded your business. You told yourself that staying out of Dalton's orbit was the smartest play in a game where the rules are rigged and the referee is his father. The townspeople have a saying: cross Dalton, cross the sheriff, cross the sheriff, cross the law, and you're outside it. And being outside the law in 1880s New Mexico territory means you're fair game for anything that happens to you. No protection, no recourse, just you and whatever violence finds you in the dark. So everyone tolerates Dalton. They swallow their anger, hide their daughters when he rides through, and pray he gets bored and moves on to terrorize someone else. It's not courage. It's not even really cowardice. It's just mathematics. One man with a badge by proxy against everyone else who has nothing but their lives to lose. The system works perfectly well for Dalton, right up until it doesn't. Chapter 4. The Girl at the Well. You're drawing water when you see her, a young Apache woman, maybe 18, trying to fill a container from your well. Before you can even greet her, you hear the horses, Dalton and his two friends, drunk at 3 in the afternoon, because why not? They circle her like wolves, making comments that don't need translation to understand. She's trying to ignore them, eyes down, but you can see her hand moving toward the knife at her belt. This is about to get ugly. You have maybe 10 seconds to decide. Intervene and make an enemy of the sheriff's family, or stay quiet and live with what happens next. Your feet are already moving before your brain finishes the calculation. Let's back up 30 seconds. Because context matters. You're at the well doing the daily water draw, which is exactly as boring as it sounds. Bucket down, bucket up, pour into the trough. Repeat until your shoulders burn and you question every life choice that brought you to this moment. The sun is directly overhead, which means it's hot enough to make you understand why hell is described as flames rather than, say, comfortable indoor temperatures. You're sweating through your shirt, thinking about absolutely nothing except the rhythm of the rope and the promise of shade once this chore is done. That's when you notice her approaching from the north. She's on foot, carrying a large clay vessel, the kind Apache women use for transporting water. She's tall, moves with the kind of easy grace that comes from walking these lands her entire life. Her dress is deerskin, decorated with beadwork that catches the light. Her hair is long and dark, pulled back practically. She's young, 18, maybe 19, with the kind of alert wariness you see in wild animals who know they're never quite safe. She stops about 20 feet from the well, waiting. Not timid exactly, just careful. Assessing whether you're going to be a problem or not. You nod to her. She nods back. It's the universal language of, I see you, you see me. We're both just trying to survive this day. She approaches the well, sets down her vessel, and begins to lower the bucket. You step back to give her space, which is apparently the right move because her shoulders relax slightly. This whole interaction takes maybe 90 seconds. Peaceful, unremarkable. Two people sharing a resource in the middle of nowhere. Then you hear it, hoofbeats, 3 horses, moving faster than the heat warrants. The sound carries that particular loose, chaotic rhythm that says the riders aren't sober. The girl hears it too. Her whole body goes rigid. Her hand drops to her side where a knife hangs from her belt in a beaded sheath. They come around the rocks to the east, Dalton in front. Carl and Pete flanking him like a formation they've practiced. All 3 are red-faced from sun and whiskey. Dalton's hat is pushed back on his head. He's grinning before he even sees what he's grinning about. Then he spots the girl. Well, well, he calls out too loud, slurring just slightly. Look what we found, boys. A little Apache dove, all alone. They spread out, encircling her without actually blocking any specific direction. It's practiced. They've done this before. The girl freezes, her bucket halfway up from the well. She sets it down carefully, both hands visible, eyes lowered in the universal gesture of, I'm not a threat. Please, move along. Dalton dismounts, stumbles slightly, catches himself. Carl laughs too loud. Pete just watches, silent and smiling. This is private property, Dalton announces, which is rich since it's not his property. Can't just have savages helping themselves to good Christian water. The girl doesn't respond. She's calculating distances, exits, odds. Her hand hovers near her knife, but drawing it would escalate things. Not drawing it leaves her vulnerable. There's no good option here, and she knows it. Dalton steps closer. You speak English, sweetheart? Or do we need to communicate some other way? Carl laughs again. Pete's smile widens. Your heart is pounding. Your mouth has gone dry despite being 6 feet from fresh water. You're gripping the well rope so hard your knuckles have gone white. You have several options here. You could go inside your cabin and pretend you don't see what's happening. You could call out something non-committal like plenty of water for everyone and hope they get bored and leave. You could mount your horse and ride to town for help that won't arrive in time to matter. Or you could walk over there and make this your problem. Every survival instinct you have is screaming at you to choose literally any option except the last one. These are the sheriff's son and his friends, armed, drunk, backed by the only law in the territory. You are one person with no authority, no backup, and no reasonable expectation that intervening will end in anything except your own injury or death. The girl's hand is trembling near her knife. Dalton is saying something else now, something that makes Carl howl with laughter. Your feet start moving, stupid feet. Chapter 5. The Intervention. Leave her alone. Your voice comes out steadier than you feel. 3 armed men turn to look at you like you just volunteered for your own funeral. Dalton's grin is all teeth and meanness. This doesn't concern you, cowboy. But you're already stepping between them and the girl, which is either the bravest or dumbest thing you've done this year. The girl's eyes widen not with gratitude yet, more like horror that you've just painted a target on both of you. Dalton's hand drops to his revolver, and you realize you left yours inside because you were just drawing water and didn't expect to need a firefight before supper. The mathematics of your survival are looking grim. Let's assess the situation you've just created for yourself. You are one unarmed man in sweat-soaked work clothes, standing in the open sun, facing 3 mounted, armed, drunk men who have legal immunity and a documented history of violence. Behind you is a young Apache woman with a knife that's probably very sharp but also very short range. Your nearest weapon is a rifle inside your cabin, approximately 40 feet away, which might as well be 40 miles given how quickly situations like this deteriorate. It's like trying to break up a bar fight, except the bar is the entire desert, there's no bartender to call for help, and everyone involved is armed with more than just broken bottles. Dalton tilts his head, studying you with the lazy curiosity of a cat that's found something interesting to torture. This doesn't concern you, he repeats, slower this time, like maybe you didn't hear him the first time. We're just having a conversation with this young lady about proper respect for property rights. She's getting water, you say, which seems obvious but apparently needs stating. Same as anyone else who comes through. Anyone else, Dalton echoes. He looks at Carl, then Pete, then back to you. You make a habit of letting savages help themselves to your resources? The word hits the air like a slap. Behind you, you feel the girl stiffen. Your jaw clenches. I make a habit of letting thirsty people drink. Strange policy, I know. Carl laughs his too loud laugh. Boy's got a mouth on him. Boy's got a mouth on him. Pete hasn't said anything yet. He's just watching with those dead eyes, hand resting casual on his saddle, near his gun. Pete, you're realizing, is the actually dangerous one. Dalton is volatile and protected. Carl is a follower. But Pete is the kind of quiet that precedes violence. You continue, because apparently your mouth has decided to keep going without consulting your brain. My land, my rules. It's a phrase that sounds braver than it is. Property rights mean something in theory. In practice, they mean whatever the man with the most guns says they mean. And right now, you're looking at 3 guns pointed at none, which is not a ratio that favors you. Dalton dismounts. This is significant. When men dismount during a confrontation, it means they're committed to staying a while. He's not quite steady on his feet, the whiskey doing its work, but he's solid enough. Bigger than you by about 20 pounds of muscle and bad intentions. You're well, he says, stepping closer. Close enough now that you can smell the whiskey on his breath, the sweat on his clothes. Your land, your rules. He's right in your face now, close enough that if you wanted to, you could probably land one good punch before his friend shot you. And what if I say different? The sun beats down. A bead of sweat rolls down your spine. Behind you, the girl has gone perfectly still. She's probably planning escape routes, which is smart because you definitely didn't plan this far ahead. Your throat is dry. Your heart is hammering against your ribs like it's trying to escape before the rest of you catches on to how much danger you're in. Then I guess we disagree, you say, which might be the most profound understatement you've ever made, considering one of you has the sheriff for a father and 3 loaded revolvers backing his position, and the other has a bucket and poor decision-making skills. Dalton's grin widens. He's enjoying this. That's when you notice his hand isn't just near his revolver anymore. It's on it. Chapter 6. Standing your ground. You don't have a gun. What you have is the well behind you. 3 hostile men in front of you, and a choice to either back down or commit fully to this catastrophically poor decision. My well, my rules, you say, which sounds braver than it is. She's getting water. You're leaving. Dalton's friends exchange looks. They came here to harass someone powerless, not to have an actual confrontation. But Dalton's pride is wounded, which makes him dangerous. He steps closer, close enough that you can smell the whiskey. You're making a mistake. You probably are, but you're making it anyway. Here's what's happening in your body right now. Your adrenal glands are dumping enough chemicals into your bloodstream to make a doctor back east write a very concerned paper. Your hands are shaking, not visibly yet, but you can feel it starting in your fingers. Your peripheral vision has tunneled down to just Dalton's face and that hand on his revolver. Your mouth tastes like copper and fear. Every muscle is coiled tight, ready to move, though to where and for what purpose, your body hasn't quite figured out yet. This is the problem with taking a stand. Once you've taken it, backing down is actually harder than standing still. It's physics, or maybe psychology, or possibly just stupidity wearing a courage costume. She's getting water. You repeat, because apparently your strategy here is just to keep saying the same thing and hope reality eventually agrees with you. Then she's leaving. Nobody needs to make this complicated. Complicated, Dalton echoes. He looks back at his friends. You hear this? This boy thinks we're making things complicated. He turns back to you, and his grin has edges now, sharp ones. Let me uncomplicate it for you. That's a savage. This is white man's territory, and you're confused about which side you're on. It's the kind of statement that demands a response. But you're realizing that anything you say right now is just going to make things worse. Words have stopped being useful. This has moved past negotiation into something more primitive. Territory, dominance, the kind of confrontation that animals have been having since before humans invented language to argue about it. Behind you, the girl finally speaks. Her English is accented but clear. I will go. No trouble. No, you say, surprising yourself with how firm it comes out. You don't turn to look at her because taking your eyes off Dalton seems like a fatal mistake. Finish getting your water. Dalton's eyebrows raise. Oh, so now you're giving orders on your own property? He's mocking you, but there's something else underneath it. Genuine confusion. People don't usually stand up to him. The script he's used to following doesn't include this part. Carl shifts in his saddle. His horse sidesteps, nervous. Dalton, maybe we should... Shut up, Carl. Pete still hasn't said a word. He's adjusted his position slightly, you notice. Better angle. If this turns into shooting, he's got the clearest line of fire at you. He's probably done this before, positioned himself just right while his friend does the talking. When the violence starts, Pete will be ready. The sun is directly overhead now. No shadows to speak of, just you and 3 men and a decision that's already been made but hasn't played out yet. It's like standing on train tracks, watching the locomotive approach, knowing you could step aside but your feet won't move. Last chance, Dalton says. His hand tightens on his revolver. Walk away. Go inside your little cabin. Let us finish our business here. The word business lands wrong. You know exactly what kind of business he means. The girl knows it too. She's gripping her water vessel now, knuckles white. You plant your feet wider. It's a small gesture, but everyone sees it. The universal body language of, I'm not moving. No, you say simply. 1 word, 2 letters, a complete sentence that might also be a complete death sentence. Dalton's face changes. The mockery drains away, replaced by something colder. Anger, yes, but also calculation. He's trying to decide how far he wants to push this. Whether teaching you a lesson is worth the effort. Whether killing a man over a water dispute is the kind of thing even his father can smooth over. The moment stretches out. 5 seconds that feel like 5 hours. Then Dalton smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. You just made an enemy, cowboy. Seems that way. You agree? Chapter 7. The sheriff's son backs down. Sort of. Here's the thing about bullies. They're used to easy victories. When someone actually stands up to them, they don't quite know what to do with it. Dalton stares at you, working through his options. He could shoot you, but even his father would have questions about why he killed an unarmed rancher over access to a well. He could fight you, but his friends are already backing toward their horses, suddenly interested in being literally anywhere else. So instead, he does what bullies do when they can't win. He promises future consequences. This isn't over, cowboy. Then he rides off, leaving you standing there with shaking hands and the slow realization that you've just made a very powerful enemy over someone whose name you don't even know. The silence after Dalton's threat is almost louder than the confrontation was. You can hear your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. A crow calls from somewhere in the distance. The wind picks up slightly, carrying dust across the open ground. Normal sounds. The world continuing like you didn't just nearly die. Dalton's working through calculations you can see playing across his face. His hand is still on his revolver, but it's not moving. Behind him, Carl's horse is dancing nervously, picking up on its rider's desire to be somewhere else. Pete's expression hasn't changed, but he hasn't drawn his weapon either, which you're interpreting as a good sign in the extremely relative sense of good. The problem Dalton's facing is this: shooting an unarmed man in broad daylight, on his own property, over a water dispute, is the kind of thing that even a corrupt sheriff has trouble explaining away. There are limits to paternal protection, and my son murdered a rancher because he was drunk and feeling mean. Probably crosses that line. Maybe. You hope. You're betting your life on maybe right now, which seems less wise by the second. This isn't over, Dalton finally says. It comes out tight, controlled. He's trying to sound threatening, but mostly sounds frustrated. You just made a big mistake, cowboy. Huge. Noted, you say, which is probably not the wisest response, but your mouth is apparently operating independently from your survival instincts. Dalton takes one step back, then another. He's doing it slowly, maintaining eye contact, trying to make it look like a choice rather than a retreat. It's the wounded animal strategy: make yourself look bigger and more dangerous while backing away from the actual fight. Come on, Carl says from his horse, voice cracking slightly. We got better things to do than waste time here. Pete finally speaks, his voice flat and cold. Yeah, let's go. That's when you know it's actually ending. When Pete decides it's over, it's over. Dalton might be the leader by birthright, but Pete's the one who actually controls the violence. And right now, Pete has apparently decided this particular violence isn't worth the effort. Dalton remounts his horse, clumsy with anger and alcohol. He points at you, finger like a gun. Next time I see you in town, we're having a conversation. A real one. Looking forward to it. You lie. He wheels his horse around, harder than necessary. The animal protests, tossing its head. Carl and Pete follow, already turning before Dalton finishes his dramatic exit. The three of them ride off toward the east, not the direction they came from, taking the long way around, making it look like they chose to leave via this route. You watch until they're small shapes in the distance, then gone entirely. Only then do you let out the breath you didn't realize you were holding. Your legs decide this is the moment to inform you they're not actually capable of holding you up anymore. You don't fall, exactly, but you do sort of lean heavily against the well structure. Your hands are shaking visibly now, the adrenaline having nowhere to go but out through trembling fingers. The mathematical reality settles over you like cold water. You just made an enemy of the sheriff's son, over a well. Overdoing the right thing, sure. But the right thing doesn't usually come with a target painted on your back. In a territory where law enforcement is already questionable and justice is mostly whatever the man with the badge says it is, you've positioned yourself directly in opposition to the only authority that exists. It's like winning a battle but realizing you've just started a war you can't possibly win. Your shirt is soaked through with sweat. Your mouth is dry, which is ironic considering you're standing next to fresh water. Your heart is still racing, convinced the danger hasn't actually passed yet. that this is just a temporary reprieve. And behind you, very quietly, the Apache girl is still standing there with her empty water vessel, watching you with an expression you can't quite read. Chapter 8. The Girl Speaks. After Dalton and his friends disappear in a cloud of dust and wounded pride, you turn to the girl. She's staring at you with an expression you can't quite read, somewhere between shock and calculation. "You didn't have to do that," she says in perfect English, which surprises you. "Seemed like I did," you reply. She studies you for a long moment, then does something unexpected. She smiles. Not a grateful smile, more like she knows something you don't. Something important. Something that's about to change everything. "My father will want to know about this," she says. "Your father? He leads our people." Oh no. You just defended a chief's daughter, which means you're now involved in politics, way above your pay grade. Let's talk about that English for a second. Not the halting, broken English you hear sometimes from Apache traders in town. This is fluent, educated English with barely an accent. The kind that says she's had real instruction, probably from missionaries, possibly from government school teachers trying to civilize native children by beating their language out of them. It's disorienting, hearing perfect English from someone you'd half expected wouldn't speak it at all. "He leads your people," you repeat, because your brain is still catching up to your mouth. As in, he's important? Her smile widens slightly. Very. This is the moment where your stomach drops into your boots. You've just inserted yourself into a situation that's exponentially more complicated than helping someone get water. You've made an enemy of the sheriff's son while simultaneously involving yourself. With Apache leadership, it's like trying to stay neutral in a conflict by accidentally punching one side's prince and then having coffee with the other side's king. "I didn't know," you say, which is both true and completely irrelevant. "I know you didn't." She picks up her water vessel and begins filling it from the bucket you'd drawn earlier. Her movements are calm, methodical, like there wasn't just a life-threatening confrontation 30 seconds ago. "That is why this matters." "Because I didn't know who you were?" "Because you helped anyway." She lifts the full bucket and pours it carefully into her vessel. Most white men would have walked away, or worse, joined them. You did neither. End quote. You don't know what to say to that, so you say nothing. Instead, you watch her work, noting the intricate beadwork on her dress, the silver bracelets at her wrists, the way she moves with absolute confidence, despite being alone in potentially hostile territory. This is not someone who expects the world to be kind, but someone who knows how to survive it anyway. "What's your name?" you finally ask. She glances at you, considering whether to answer. "The missionaries call me Sarah," she says, pronouncing it with a slight inflection that suggests it's not really her name, just the name she uses with people like you, who can't properly pronounce what her parents called her. "And you are?" You tell her. "Your actual name. The one your mother gave you. The one that's on the deed to this property." It feels important somehow, this exchange of names, like you're establishing something official, though you're not sure what. "Thank you," she says, straightforward. "You already had your knife out," you point out. "Seemed like you had a plan." "My plan was to kill one and run from the other two. Your plan was better." She secures the lid on her vessel and lifts it with both hands. The thing must weigh 40 pounds full. She doesn't strain. "My father will want to meet the man who stood between his daughter and the sheriff's son. He will want to know what kind of person does this." And what do you think he'll decide? She looks at you with those dark, intelligent eyes. I think he will decide you are either very brave or very stupid. Could be both. You offer. Yes, she agrees. That is what worries me. She adjusts the vessel against her hip, preparing to leave. You have about 1,000 questions about her father, about what happens next, about whether you should be preparing for visitors or preparing to flee to California. But before you can ask any of them, she speaks again. They will come back, she says, nodding toward the direction Dalton rode off. That boy does not forget insults. And you have given him a large one. I figured, my father should know this. He should know there is a white man here who does not fear the sheriff's son, who chooses honor over safety. She pauses. We do not have many allies among your people. Perhaps we have one now. And with that cryptic statement, she turns and walks north, carrying her water, leaving you standing by your well with the sinking feeling that your life just became infinitely more complicated than drawing water and tending horses. Chapter 9. She takes the water. The girl finishes filling her container with water from your well. You stand there awkwardly, wondering if you should say something profound or just let the moment pass. What's your name? You finally ask. She tells you a name that sounds like water over stones, beautiful and impossible for your Anglo tongue to properly pronounce. You can call me Sarah, she adds, taking pity on you. The missionaries gave me that one. She hoists the water container with ease and turns to leave, then pauses. That boy you stood against his anger will not cool. You should leave this place. You tell her you can't. This is your home. She nods, understanding, then says something that sends a chill down your spine. Then my father will come. You're not sure if that's a threat or a promise. She's already walking away when you finally process what she said. Wait, what does that mean? Your father will come? She doesn't stop walking, but she does turn her head slightly, calling back over her shoulder. It means what it means. Helpful. Very helpful. That's like a doctor saying you have a condition, and then leaving the room without explaining if it's a head cold or cholera. You watch her move north across the scrubland, the water vessel balanced on her hip like it weighs nothing. She doesn't look back again, just walks with that same fluid confidence, completely at ease in terrain that still sometimes trips you up. Within minutes, she's crested a low rise and disappeared from view, leaving you alone with your thoughts and your increasingly questionable life choices. The sun is starting its afternoon descent. Your shirt is still damp with fierce sweat. Your hands have mostly stopped shaking, though they're threatening to start up again every time you think about Dalton's face when he promised this wasn't over. You look around your property, your 40 acres of contested paradise. The cabin that you built with your own hands and borrowed money. The barn that's mostly straight. The corral with 3 horses who are watching you with what you swear is judgment in their eyes. Like they can't believe you just did something that stupid. She needed help, you say aloud to the horses, because apparently you've reached the point of defending your actions to livestock. The bay gelding snorts. Even the horses think you're an idiot. You walk back to the well and sit on the stone wall surrounding it, trying to organize your thoughts into something resembling a plan. Let's review. You've made an enemy of Dalton, who will absolutely hold a grudge and has the sheriff's protection to act on it. You've involved yourself with an Apache chief's daughter, which means you're now on the radar of one of the most powerful native leaders in the territory. You're geographically positioned between 3 different power structures, all of whom have conflicting interests and substantial firepower. And somewhere in all of this, a chief is coming. Maybe to thank you, Maybe to interrogate you about your intentions. Maybe to assess whether you're an ally or a threat. You have no idea which, and Sarah seemed perfectly content to leave you in suspense about it. It's like being told you have a meeting with someone important but not being told if it's a job interview or a murder trial. You draw up another bucket of water and drink directly from it, not bothering with a cup. The water is cold and clean and tastes faintly of minerals. This well is why you bought this land. This well is why you stayed. And now this well is why you're in the middle of a situation that could get you killed by either side or possibly both. The afternoon stretches out quiet around you. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound, the wind through the sage, the horses shifting in the corral, the creak of the barn wood expanding in the heat. You're listening for hoofbeats. Could be Dalton coming back with reinforcements. Could be the chief arriving ahead of schedule. Could be the army patrol that sometimes comes through, about to ask why you're harboring Apache visitors. Or it could be nothing. Just your paranoia turning every natural sound into a threat. You go inside the cabin and retrieve your rifle, not because you're planning to shoot anyone that would be suicide at this point given how many people might have reason to shoot back, but because holding it makes you feel slightly less vulnerable. It's security theater, but sometimes theater is all you have. The sun continues its descent. Shadows lengthen across the property. Your stomach reminds you that you haven't eaten since morning, too focused on water drawing and confrontations to think about food. You should probably eat something. You should probably do a lot of things. Reinforce the cabin door. Check your ammunition supply. Write a will. Instead, you sit on your porch with your rifle across your lap and watch the horizon, waiting for whatever's coming next. A chief, a sheriff's son with a grudge, an army of warriors, a diplomatic nightmare, a simple thank you visit, any or all of the above. The only thing you know for certain is that giving water to a thirsty person has somehow transformed your quiet, isolated ranch into the center of something much bigger than yourself. And there's no taking it back now. The decision is made. The words are spoken. The water is given. Now you just have to survive the consequences. Chapter 10. The Long Night. That night, you don't sleep. Every sound outside could be Dalton coming back with reinforcements, or the sheriff himself, or worse. You sit on your porch with your rifle across your lap, watching the horizon, wondering if you just signed your own death warrant for a simple act of human decency. The desert is never truly quiet. There's always the wind, the distant cry of coyotes, the creaking of your barn. But tonight, every sound feels loaded with meaning. You think about Sarah's words. My father will come. You don't know if Apache chiefs personally handle diplomatic incidents or if they send representatives. You don't know if defending his daughter makes you an ally or if interfering in the situation makes you presumptuous. Turns out, you're about to find out. The stars are unnaturally bright tonight, which is beautiful in a way that feels almost mocking, like the universe is showing off while you're sitting here contemplating your mortality. The Milky Way stretches across the sky in a band of light that people back east pay money to see through telescopes. Out here, it's just Tuesday night, assuming you survive to see Wednesday. Your neck hurts from the angle you're holding it, constantly scanning the horizon. Your trigger finger aches from resting on the guard, not on the trigger itself, because you're not an idiot, but close enough that you could react quickly if needed. Your back protests the wooden porch post you're leaning against. Turns out vigilance is physically uncomfortable, which feels like an unfair design flaw in the whole survival instinct system. Around midnight, you're guessing based on the stars because you don't own a watch and wouldn't check it if you did. The coyotes start up. They're far off, probably miles away, but sound carries at night in the desert. Their yipping and howling creates a chorus that's somehow both lonely and communal. They're talking to each other in a language you don't understand, coordinating something you can't see. It occurs to you that this is basically your situation with every human in the territory right now. Everyone's communicating, coordinating, making plans, and you're just sitting here hoping none of those plans involve your untimely death. You try to reconstruct the confrontation in your mind, analyzing it for mistakes. Should you have handled it differently? Maybe been more diplomatic, less confrontational? But what's the diplomatic approach to "please stop threatening this woman"? What's the polite phrasing for "get off my property before someone gets hurt"? There isn't one. Some situations don't have a smooth talking solution. Sometimes you just have to stand there and hope your conviction carries more weight than their guns. Around 2 in the morning again, guessing you hear something that definitely isn't coyotes. Hoofbeats, distant but approaching. Your entire body goes rigid. Your hand moves to the rifle. This is it. Either Dalton coming back for revenge, or the sheriff arriving to arrest you for disturbing the peace, or possibly the entire U.S. Army deciding you're harboring enemy combatants. You stand, moving to the edge of the porch, rifle ready but not raised. The hoofbeats get closer. You can almost see. Nothing. They veer off, passing well south of your property. Just travelers using the night to avoid the heat. They probably don't even know you exist, much less care about your dramatic personal crisis. Your heart rate takes about 20 minutes to return to normal. By 3 o'clock, you're having a conversation with yourself about the nature of heroism versus stupidity. The conclusion you reach is that they're probably the same thing, viewed from different time periods. If you survive this, you're a hero who stood up for what's right. If you die, you're an idiot who picked a fight he couldn't win over a stranger's water access. History is written by the survivors, which means you need to focus on the surviving part. The temperature drops as the night deepens. The desert doesn't retain heat, it releases it the moment the sun goes down, like it can't wait to be rid of the burden. You pull your jacket tighter. Your eyes are burning from staying open, but every time you consider closing them for just a moment, your brain helpfully supplies a vivid image of Dalton's face, promising that this isn't over. Sleep deprivation does interesting things to your thought process. Around 4 in the morning, you become convinced that one of the fence posts is actually a person standing very still. You stare at it for 10 full minutes before accepting that it's just a fence post and you're losing your mind. The horses are restless. They keep shifting in the corral, occasionally snorting or stamping. They can sense your tension, or maybe they're picking up on something you can't hear yet. Animals have better instincts than humans about when danger is approaching. It's one of the many evolutionary advantages we traded away in exchange for opposable thumbs and the ability to worry about abstract concepts like reputation and consequences. You think about Sarah walking north with her water vessel. Is she home now? Has she told her father about what happened? Is he angry that you interfered, or pleased that someone helped his daughter? Does Apache protocol require some kind of formal response to this situation, or can everyone just agree to move on and pretend it didn't happen? The not knowing is worse than any specific threat. Your imagination fills the void with every possible scenario, ranging from minor diplomatic incident that blows over to you started a war and everyone's about to die. Somewhere around 4:30, exhaustion nearly wins. Your eyes close for what you tell yourself is just a blink. When they open again, the stars have shifted. You've been asleep not deeply, but enough. Could have been 2 minutes or 20. In a situation where timing matters, you've just lost track of time. That's when you notice the horizon to the east is no longer perfectly dark. There's a hint of gray, the earliest suggestion that dawn is considering making an appearance. You've made it through the night, alive, unshot, unarrested. The relief lasts exactly as long as it takes you to remember that morning brings its own problems. Daylight means visibility. Visibility means anyone looking for you can find you. And Sarah said her father would come. You stand, stretching muscles that have locked into uncomfortable positions. Your rifle is slick with the sweat from your palms. Your mouth tastes like fear and dehydration. The gray on the horizon spreads, pushing back the darkness. Dawn is coming, and with it, apparently, consequences. Chapter 11. Dawn breaks. You must have dozed off around 4 in the morning, because the sun in your eyes wakes you with a start. You're still on the porch, rifle across your lap, neck screaming from the awkward angle you slept at. You stand, stretching, squinting against the early light, and that's when you see them. At first, you think you're still dreaming a nightmare maybe, or possibly you've died and this is purgatory, because on every ridge surrounding your property, silhouetted against the rising sun, are warriors. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. On horseback, perfectly still, watching your ranch like they've been there all night. Your rifle suddenly feels very light and very useless. You start counting, then stop when you get past 100. This is an army, and they're surrounding you. Let's talk about scale for a moment, because your brain is having trouble processing what your eyes are showing it. You've seen groups of Apache before, families traveling, small hunting parties, maybe a dozen warriors at most. This is not that. This is organized military force. This is the difference between seeing a house cat and seeing a pride of lions. Technically, the same species. Functionally, a completely different threat level. They're on every ridge, north, south, east, west. Positioned with clear strategic intent, high ground, overlapping fields of view, no gaps in the perimeter. Someone planned this. Someone who understands tactics and terrain and how to make a statement that doesn't require words. The statement is, you are surrounded, completely. Escape is not an option. Resistance is mathematical suicide. Your hands have gone numb. Not from cold, the morning air is already warming, but from the sheer adrenaline dump your system just experienced. It's like your body opened every emergency valve simultaneously and is now flooding your bloodstream with every chemical designed to keep you alive in crisis situations. Unfortunately, none of those chemicals include good judgment or useful strategies for dealing with being surrounded by hundreds of armed warriors. The sun continues rising, painting the sky in oranges and pinks that would be beautiful if you weren't currently calculating your life expectancy in minutes. The light catches on metal rifle barrels, lance tips, the silver decorations on horses' bridles. These aren't just warriors. They're well-armed, well-mounted, well-organized warriors who've apparently been in position for hours, waiting for you to wake up, which means they've been watching you sleep, on your own porch, with your rifle in your lap, completely unaware that you were already surrounded before you even dozed off. It's embarrassing, honestly. All that vigilance, all that careful watching, and they walked right past you in the dark and took position like you were irrelevant to the proceedings, which, given the current power dynamic, you absolutely are. Your throat is dry. Your tongue feels like leather. You should probably say something, do something. But what's the protocol here? Is there a proper etiquette for being surrounded by an Apache army? Does Emily Post have a chapter on this? The horses in your corral are pressed against the far fence, as far from the surrounding warriors as they can get. They knew. All night, they knew something was out there. Their nervous energy wasn't paranoia, it was accurate threat assessment. You should listen to your horses more often, assuming you survive to have future opportunities for horse listening. One of the warriors on the north ridge moves slightly. It's a small gesture, just a shift in posture, but after the absolute stillness, it feels significant, like a signal, like something is about to happen. Your hand tightens on your rifle. Not raising it, that would be suicide, just holding it. A security blanket that fires bullets. Not that bullets would help. You could maybe hit one, possibly two warriors before the other few hundred turned you into a human pincushion. The mathematics are not in your favor. The sun clears the ridgeline. Full daylight now. No more shadows to hide in. Not that hiding was ever an option, given that they clearly have your property completely mapped and secured. You've been in tight situations before. That time the barn caught fire. That winter when you nearly froze to death during a blizzard. That incident with the rattlesnake in your boot. But all of those situations had potential solutions. Possible paths to survival that involved your own actions and choices. This situation has removed your agency entirely. You're not a participant anymore. You're an audience member watching events unfold around you, and you have absolutely no idea what role you're supposed to play in whatever comes next. The only thing you know for certain is that Sarah was right. Her father came. He apparently brought everyone he knows. Chapter 12. The Father Appears. From the main group, a single rider separates and begins descending toward your ranch. He's flanked by two others, but he's clearly the leader. You can tell by the way he sits his horse, by the deference the others show. As he gets closer, you see he's older, face weathered by sun and time, wearing a mixture of traditional clothing and traded goods. He stops 20 feet from your porch. You realize you're holding your breath. He speaks in Apache, a long, flowing sentence that you don't understand. One of his companions translates, "My daughter told me what happened yesterday." You swallow hard. "I didn't mean any disrespect." You start, but he raises a hand, stopping you. The translator continues, "She said you stood between her and danger when you had no weapon, when you had no obligation, when you had everything to lose." You nod slowly. The chief studies you with dark, intelligent eyes. Then he smiles. The descent takes maybe 2 minutes, but feels like 2 hours. You watch every step of the 3 horses picking their way down the rocky slope. The chief's horse is a paint brown and white patches, the kind that probably cost more than your entire ranch. It moves with the careful precision of an animal that's been trained by someone who actually knows what they're doing, unlike your 3 semi-cooperative horses who view training as a suggestion they're free to ignore. The 2 flanking riders are younger, probably in their 30s. Warriors who carry themselves with the easy confidence of men who've survived things you can't imagine. Their armed rifles across their saddles, knives at their belts. One has a lance that catches the morning light, but their weapons aren't drawn. This isn't an attack posture. This is a diplomatic escort. Probably. You hope. You're really hoping. As they get closer, you can make out more details of the chief. He's wearing deerskin leggings decorated with intricate beadwork, a cotton shirt that probably came from a trader, and a vest that looks like a mixture of both traditions, leather base with silver conchos that flash in the sunlight. His hair is long and mostly black with threads of gray, held back with a red cloth headband. His face is deeply lined, not just from age, but from living a life where every decision carries weight. He's probably 60, maybe older. It's hard to tell with people who've spent their entire lives outdoors. The sun writes history on faces differently than indoor living does. When he stops his horse 20 feet from your porch, the two flanking riders stop as well, maintaining perfect formation. There's a brief moment where nobody moves, nobody speaks, just you standing on your porch with your useless rifle, and three Apache men on horseback, backlit by a rising sun that's making this moment feel far more dramatic than your sleep-deprived brain can properly process. Then the chief speaks. His voice is deep, measured, carrying the kind of authority that doesn't need volume. The Apache language flows like water over rocks, sounds and rhythms completely foreign to your ear. You catch yourself leaning forward, as if proximity will somehow make you understand words you've never learned. One of the flanking riders, the one on the left, shifts his horse forward slightly. He's younger than the chief, but older than you, with a scar running down his left cheek. "My daughter told me what happened yesterday." He translates, his English accented but clear. "Your mouth has gone completely dry. This is it. Judgment time. Explanation time. The moment where you find out if surrounding someone with 500 warriors is how Apache culture says thank you or prepare to die. I didn't mean any disrespect. You start because apparently when faced with a potentially life-ending diplomatic incident, your brain defaults to apologizing for things you're not even sure you did wrong. She needed water, and those men were." The chief raises his hand. Not aggressive, not angry, just a simple gesture that says, "Stop talking," in the universal language of hand signals. You stop talking. When a man who commands 500 warriors tells you to stop talking, even non-verbally, you stop talking. The translator continues, and you realize the chief has been speaking this whole time while you were babbling. She said you stood between her and danger when you had no weapon, when you had no obligation, when you had everything to lose. The words land heavy. This isn't an accusation. It's a statement of fact, delivered with the weight of someone who understands exactly what you did and what it cost, or could have cost, to do it. You nod slowly, because words seem dangerous right now, and nodding is non-committal enough to not get you killed. Probably. The chief studies you with eyes that are dark and sharp and intelligent in a way that makes you feel like he's reading your entire life story just by looking at your face, like he can see every choice you've made, every fear you're currently experiencing, every thought running through your panicked mind. It's the look of someone who spent decades assessing threats, reading intentions, deciding who lives and who dies based on split-second judgments. Then, slowly, he smiles. Not a big smile, not a friendly, let's be pals smile, but a small, measured expression that transforms his entire face from stern authority to something almost approving. Your knees nearly give out from relief. Chapter 13. The Translation of Gratitude. Through the translator, the chief explains, in his culture, what you did yesterday wasn't just kindness, it was the highest form of honor. You risked your life for someone who wasn't your kin, wasn't your tribe, wasn't even your responsibility, and not just anyone. His daughter, who had been undergoing a traditional rite of passage when Dalton interfered. By defending her, you've essentially involved yourself in something much bigger than a water dispute. You've demonstrated that not all white settlers are enemies, that some understand the old codes of honor that transcend culture. The chief speaks again, longer this time, his voice carrying across the quiet morning. The translator says, He wants you to know that you are under his protection now. These warriors aren't here to threaten you. They're here to honor you. And to deliver a message to the sheriff's son, the translator pauses, letting that sink in. You're trying to process several pieces of information simultaneously, which is difficult given that you haven't slept properly and your brain is still convinced you might be about to die. First, rite of passage. Sarah wasn't just getting water. She was undergoing some kind of traditional trial, proving herself capable of surviving alone, demonstrating her readiness for whatever comes next in Apache society. It's like a final exam, except instead of testing your knowledge of arithmetic, it's testing your ability to not die in the desert. And Dalton interrupted it, which, in addition to being threatening and cruel, was apparently a profound cultural violation. You had no idea. You just saw someone in trouble and reacted. Turns out you accidentally did something with massive cultural significance while thinking you were just preventing an assault. It's like stumbling into someone's wedding ceremony and accidentally saying the exact right thing in a language you don't speak. Pure chance, elevated to meaning. Second, honor. The way the translator says the word, it carries weight. This isn't, "Oh, how nice of you," honor. This is, you have demonstrated the fundamental values that hold civilization together, honor. The kind that requires public acknowledgement. The kind that, apparently, necessitates bringing 500 armed warriors to your ranch at dawn to witness it. It's the most intimidating thank you card you've ever received. The chief continues speaking, his words flowing in that rhythmic pattern you're starting to recognize even if you can't understand it. The translator keeps pace, converting meaning if not exact words. In the old days, before the white men's fences, a man who showed such courage would be adopted into the tribe, given a name, made brother. The translator pauses. My chief says those days are more complicated now. The tribes are scattered. The old ways are difficult. But the principle remains. You have shown yourself worthy of trust. Worthy of trust. Coming from a people who've been systematically betrayed by white settlers and the U.S. government for decades, that phrase carries more weight than gold. You're being told that you've done something so fundamentally decent that it's overcome generations of justified suspicion and hostility. No pressure or anything. The chief gestures broadly at the warriors surrounding your property. The translator explains, these men came to witness, to see the white man who defended an Apache woman against his own people. To show you that honor recognizes honor, even across the divide of war. It's hitting you now, really hitting you, that this isn't about you personally. You've become a symbol, a living example that coexistence might be possible, that not all settlers are enemies, that the old codes of honor protect the vulnerable, stand up to bullies, share resources with those in need still mean something to somebody. You're a political statement made flesh, a walking, talking, sleep-deprived argument for the possibility of peace. The chief speaks again, shorter this time, his tone shifting slightly. You recognize authority when you hear it, even in a language you don't understand. The translator's voice becomes more formal. You are under our protection. Any who harm you harm us. Any who threaten you threaten the tribe. That's a hell of a warranty, better than anything the general store offers. These warriors will remain until the sun is high, the translator continues, so that all who pass will see, so that the message is clear. He pauses, and something that might be amusement flickers across his face, especially clear to the sheriff's son, who my chief believes will be. interested in this gathering. Ah, there it is. This isn't just about honoring you. This is about sending a very public, very visible message to Dalton. You picked on the wrong person. The girl you threatened has a father with an army, and that army is now personally invested in the continued good health of the man who defended her. It's the frontier equivalent of having your big brother show up to the schoolyard, except your big brother brought several hundred armed friends and they're all standing on the ridges in perfect military formation while you eat your lunch. Dalton is going to lose his mind when he hears about this. Actually, Dalton is probably going to see it himself. Your ranch is visible from the road to town. Anyone passing by this morning is going to witness 500 Apache warriors surrounding your property in what is very clearly not an attack posture. The gossip is going to spread faster than wildfire in a drought. The chief says something else, softer now, almost conversational. The translator smiles for the first time. My chief says you look tired. He asks if you slept well. Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the surreal nature of being honored by an army, you almost laugh. Not particularly. No, the translator conveys this. The chief's smile widens slightly. He responds, and the translator says, he says this is good. A man who sleeps well when he has acted with courage has either a clear conscience or no conscience at all. You appear to have the former. It's a compliment, you think. Possibly. Cross-cultural communication is complicated. The chief nods once, a gesture of finality. Whatever he came here to say has been said. Whatever needed to be witnessed has been witnessed. The message is delivered. You are under protection. You are honored. And everyone, especially Dalton, is about to know it. Chapter 14. The numbers sink in. As the sun rises higher, you begin to truly comprehend what you're seeing. 500 warriors, 500, surrounding your modest ranch, armed with rifles, bows, spears, organized, disciplined, waiting for orders. This isn't just a thank you visit. This is a demonstration of power, a statement. The chief is showing you, and more importantly, showing the sheriff and everyone else in the territory, that you are now allied with one of the most formidable military forces in the region. The weight of this settles on you slowly. Yesterday you were a nobody rancher, trying to scrape out a living. Today you've become a political flashpoint. Every decision you make from this moment forward carries implications you barely understand. Welcome to frontier diplomacy, where one act of decency can reshape the entire power structure of a territory. Let's put 500 in perspective, because numbers don't mean much until you visualize them. 500 warriors is more people than live in the entire town of Redemption. It's more armed men than the U.S. Army has stationed in this entire territory. It's enough people to fill a good-sized church 3 times over. It's the population of a small eastern city, except instead of shopkeepers and clerks, it's warriors who've spent their entire lives learning how to survive in terrain that kills outsiders for sport. Your brain keeps trying to count them, like if you can just get an exact number, it'll make the situation more manageable. But every time you focus on one ridge, you notice more warriors on another ridge you hadn't fully processed. They're layered, some visible on the skyline, others positioned slightly below in defensive formations. Some are mounted, some standing beside their horses. It's not a mob. It's a military operation with clear command structure and tactical positioning. You own 40 acres. By your rough estimation, There's approximately one warrior for every 100 square feet of your property. You're outnumbered by a ratio that would make a mathematician weep. The morning light catches on metal and glass rifle barrels, yes, but also binoculars. Someone up there is watching through actual optics, which means this is even more organized than you thought. They're not just present. They're conducting surveillance, probably reporting back about your every move, your every expression, whether you're currently panicking appropriately or not panicking enough. Your 3 horses have given up on being nervous and have moved into acceptance. They're grazing now, apparently having concluded that if they were going to die, it would have happened already. Your chickens are oblivious, scratching in the dirt like this is any other morning. The one-eyed leader is still terrorizing her subordinates. Natural order maintained despite the apocalyptic military presence. It occurs to you that you don't have enough coffee for 500 guests. You don't have enough water, food, or anything else. If this were a social call requiring hospitality, you'd be the worst host in territorial history. Fortunately or unfortunately, this isn't about hospitality. This is about something much larger and more complicated. Yesterday morning, your biggest concern was whether you'd have enough money to buy seed for spring planting. You were anonymous, irrelevant, a single homesteader among thousands, trying to survive in a harsh land, bothering nobody, hoping nobody bothered you. 24 hours later, you're standing at the center of what is essentially a public declaration of alliance between a white settler and one of the most powerful Apache chiefs in New Mexico territory. You've gone from invisible to unavoidable, from neutral to aligned, from nobody to somebody whether you wanted to be or not. The territorial governor is probably going to have opinions about this. The U.S. Army definitely will. The sheriff. Oh, the sheriff is going to have very strong feelings indeed. Every settler within 100 miles is going to hear about this and form conclusions about what it means. Whether those conclusions are accurate or not, you've become a piece on a chessboard you didn't know you were playing on. Except unlike chess, where pieces understand their role, you have absolutely no idea what your next move should be, or what rules govern this game. The chief is still sitting on his horse, watching you process all of this. There's something almost amused in his expression, like he understands exactly what's happening in your head. He's done this before, made strategic alliances, sent messages through demonstrations of force, turned individuals into symbols. This is old hat for him. For you, this is the weirdest Tuesday of your entire life. The sun continues climbing. The temperature rises. The warriors remain in position, patient as stones. This is their job, standing, waiting, being seen, making the point that needs to be made through sheer visible presence. And you're just standing on your porch, still holding your rifle that couldn't stop even a fraction of this force, wondering how giving someone water turned into a geopolitical incident. The frontier is complicated. Turns out, doing the right thing is even more complicated. But there's no going back now. The message has been sent. Your name is now written in the political ledger of the territory. Whether you can read that ledger or not, welcome to relevance. It's terrifying. Chapter 15. The sheriff arrives. It takes about an hour for word to reach town, and another 30 minutes for the sheriff to arrive with a dozen armed deputies. They stop well short of your property line when they see the warriors. You watch the sheriff's face go through several emotions: confusion, fear, anger, calculation. He rides closer slowly, hands visible, trying to project authority he clearly doesn't feel. "What's the meaning of this?" he demands, looking between you and the chief. You realize he's asking you, not the chief, which is revealing. Before you can answer, the translator speaks. Your son attacked this chief's daughter. This man protected her. The chief is here to thank him and to ensure there are no further incidents. The sheriff's face goes pale, then red. He's beginning to understand that his son just created a diplomatic crisis. The sheriff and his deputies appear from the South Road like a much less impressive parade. 12 men on horseback, wearing badges and carrying rifles, riding with the kind of confidence that comes from being the biggest threat in most situations. They're used to being the ones who make people nervous. They're used to arriving and having everyone else accommodate them. That confidence lasts exactly as long as it takes them to crest the rise and see your property. You watch it happen in real time, the moment when 12 armed lawmen realize they are catastrophically outgunned. The lead riders pull up short. The ones behind bunch up, confused about why they're stopping. Then they see the ridges. The horses start dancing sideways, picking up on their riders' sudden anxiety. One deputy's hat falls off. He doesn't dismount to retrieve it. It's like watching someone walk confidently toward a door and then realize at the last second that it's not a door. It's a painting of a door, and they're about to walk face first into a wall. Except the wall is 500 armed warriors who've been watching you sleep. The sheriff, Benjamin Reeves, a man who's probably 50 but looks 60 from a lifetime of territorial sun and administrative stress, recovers first. He's a politician as much as a lawman. You can see him physically composing himself, straightening in his saddle, arranging his face into something approximating authority. He rides forward slowly. His deputies stay back, which is probably the smartest decision they'll make all week. Hands visible, movements careful, the sheriff approaches your property line like a man approaching a rattlesnake, trying to look calm while internally screaming. What's the meaning of this? He demands when he's close enough to be heard without shouting. His voice is pitched to carry authority, but there's a crack in it, a tremor. He's looking between you and the chief, trying to figure out who's in charge of this situation. The fact that he's asking you instead of the chief tells you everything about how he views the world. To him, you're the translator, the intermediary, the white man who can explain what these Indians want. It doesn't occur to him to address the chief directly, to acknowledge him as the authority figure he clearly is. It's the kind of casual dismissal that's probably caused half the conflicts in this territory. Before you can figure out how to answer, and honestly, what would you even say? Well, Sheriff, your son is a violent bully and I intervened, and now I'm being honored by an army. How's your morning going? The translator speaks up. His voice is calm, clear, diplomatic. Your son attacked this chief's daughter. This man protected her. The chief is here to thank him and to ensure there are no further incidents. The words land like stones in still water. You watch the ripples spread across the sheriff's face. First, confusion. His eyebrows draw together. My son? Second, fear. His eyes widen slightly as the implications start forming. 500 warriors, his son, an attack. The math is not complicated. Third, anger. His face flushes red, starting at his collar and spreading upward. His jaw clenches. But the anger isn't directed at you, you realize. Not yet. It's directed at Dalton, who apparently didn't mention yesterday's incident when he got home. Fourth, calculation. This is the scary one. You watch the sheriff's mind work, visible in the tiny movements of his eyes. He's assessing, planning, figuring out how to minimize damage to his position, his authority, his family's reputation. The silence stretches. The deputies shift nervously on their horses. The warriors remain perfectly still, watching. The chief sits calm and regal, waiting for the sheriff's response, with the patience of someone who holds all the cards and knows it. You're just standing there on your porch, exhausted, caffeinated incorrectly, wondering if it's possible to die from second-hand embarrassment because the sheriff is about to have a very bad conversation and you have front-row seats. "There's been a misunderstanding," the sheriff finally says, his voice strained with the effort of maintaining composure. The translator doesn't bother conveying this to the chief. Instead, he responds directly, "There is no misunderstanding. Your son and his friends threatened a young woman. This man intervened. These are facts." The sheriff's horse sidesteps. He reins it in harder than necessary. "I'll need to speak with my son. Get his version of events." "His version," the translator repeats, letting the words hang in the air with all their implication, as if there are multiple valid versions of three armed drunk men threatening an unarmed woman. The sheriff's face goes from red to a kind of mottled purple. He's really realizing that his son's behavior has created a situation that could escalate into violence, that the protection he's always extended to Dalton has finally encountered a limit, that there's an authority in this territory greater than a badge and a father's blind loyalty, and that authority is currently surrounding your ranch with enough force to make the entire territorial government reconsider its position on Apache relations. Welcome to consequences, Sheriff Reeves. Population, you, your son, and the diplomatic nightmare you're both standing in. Chapter C's Justice, Frontier Style. The chief speaks again, and the translator's words are clear and cold. "Bring the boy who attacked my daughter. Let him face justice." The sheriff's jaw clenches. This is U.S. territory. We handle our own justice. The chief's response needs no translation. He simply gestures at the 500 warriors surrounding the area. The translator adds, "Do you see any U.S. Army here? I see only one lawman, and the men we allow to live." It's not a threat, it's a statement of fact. The balance of power in this moment is crystal clear. The sheriff looks at you, possibly hoping for some kind of intervention, but you're just standing there, trying to process how drawing water yesterday led to this. After a long silence, the sheriff says, "I'll bring him." He rides back toward town, and you wonder if Dalton has any idea what's coming. Let's talk about that gesture for a moment. The chief doesn't make a grand sweeping motion like he's revealing a prize on a game show. It's subtle, almost casual, just a slight movement of his hand, drawing attention to the ridges, to the warriors, to the overwhelming military reality of the situation. It's the gesture equivalent of saying, "I'm not threatening you, I'm just reminding you of the facts on the ground." Except the facts on the ground include enough armed warriors to overthrow a small government, which makes the gesture significantly more persuasive than most facts typically are. The translator's addition is even better. "Do you see any U.S. Army here? I see only one lawman and the men we allow to live." It's delivered in the same calm, diplomatic tone he's been using all morning, like he's commenting on the weather, like he's not pointing out that the sheriff and his 12 deputies exist right now purely because the chief hasn't decided otherwise. It's the most polite way possible to say, "Your authority is fictional and my patience is finite." The sheriff understands. You can see it in the way his shoulders sag slightly, in how his hand moves away from his sidearm. Not that the sidearm was going to be useful, but it's symbolic. He's acknowledging that the usual tools of his authority don't apply here. The badge doesn't matter. The deputized men don't matter. The legal framework of territorial law doesn't matter. What matters is that 500 warriors are currently providing a very physical, very visible counter-argument to any claim of sovereignty. This is what they don't teach you about the frontier. It's not about laws written in Washington. It's about who can enforce what, where, when, and right now, in this specific location, at this specific time. The enforcement authority belongs entirely to the man sitting calmly on a paint horse, asking for justice in the most reasonable tone imaginable. While backed by overwhelming force, the sheriff looks at you, actually looks at you, making eye contact, possibly for the first time since he arrived. There's something desperate in that look, like maybe you'll intervene, like maybe you'll smooth this over. Like maybe because you're white and presumably on his side by default, you'll help him find a way out of this. You say nothing. Partly because you have no idea what to say. Partly because this isn't your conflict to resolve. You're just the guy who gave someone water and somehow became the centerpiece of a diplomatic incident. Partly because the sheriff has spent years enabling his son's violence. And maybe, just maybe, consequences are overdue. The silence stretches. A crow calls from somewhere distant. One of the deputy's horses snorts. Normal sounds in an extremely abnormal situation. "I'll bring him," the sheriff finally says. The words come out flat. Defeated. It's not a negotiation. It's surrender wrapped in compliance. He doesn't wait for acknowledgement. He just wheels his horse around less dramatically than Dalton did yesterday. More like a man who's just agreed to something he never wanted to agree to and starts riding back toward town. His deputies follow, bunching together like they're trying to present a smaller target, though nobody's threatening them. Not yet, anyway. You watch them disappear down the south road, dust rising behind their horses. The morning sun is fully up now, turning the desert golden. It would be beautiful if you weren't standing in the middle of what is essentially a trial, except you're not sure if you're a witness, a defendant, or somehow the judge. The chief says something to the translator, too quiet for you to hear. The translator nods, then turns to you. "We will wait, however long it takes. My chief is patient." Patience, backed by 500 warriors, is a very particular kind of patience. It's the kind that doesn't need to rush because time is on its side, and leaving isn't a concern. You nod, because what else are you going to do? You offer, because hospitality is the only script you have for this situation, even though it's wildly inadequate. The translator actually smiles at that. Coffee would be welcome. And so you find yourself walking into your cabin to make coffee for an Apache chief and his translator, while 500 warriors wait outside for the sheriff to return with his son to face justice for attacking the chief's daughter, whom you defended yesterday by pure instinct, leading to this entire impossible situation. Your coffee tin has maybe enough for 20 cups. You're going to need more coffee. You're going to need so much more coffee. Chapter 17. Hospitality in Crisis. While waiting for the sheriff to return with his son, an awkward situation develops. You have 500 guests on your property, and absolutely no infrastructure for this. The chief seems amused by your obvious discomfort. Through the translator, he says, "We do not need your food or water. We came prepared." But then Sarah appears. Apparently she's been here the whole time, and suggests you make coffee as a gesture of hospitality. So you find yourself brewing coffee for a war party, which is not a situation covered in any etiquette manual you've ever read. Sarah helps you, and in the process, She explains more about what happened yesterday. She wasn't just fetching water. She was on a trial, a coming-of-age journey, proving she could survive alone. Dalton's harassment was not just an insult, it was interference in a sacred right. No wonder her father brought an army. Sarah emerges from somewhere behind the northern ridge, walking down toward your cabin like this is completely normal. Like she's just dropping by for a social call, not appearing in the middle of a tense diplomatic standoff involving her father's entire military force and your complete bewilderment. "You look terrible," she observes. "Didn't sleep." You reply, "Army outside." "We were quiet," she says, almost apologetic. "You should not have heard us arrive." The fact that 500 mounted warriors surrounded your property in complete silence is somehow more terrifying than if they'd announced themselves. It means they're really, really good at this. Professional grade good. You've been operating under the assumption that you'd hear trouble coming. That assumption, you're realizing, was wildly optimistic. She glances at your pathetic coffee situation, your tin that's approximately 1/10 of what this situation requires, and does that thing where she's clearly amused but too polite to laugh at you directly. "Make what you can," she says. "It is the gesture that matters, not the quantity." So you start making coffee while 500 warriors wait outside, and your entire understanding of frontier hospitality gets stress-tested beyond all reasonable parameters. Your coffee pot holds maybe 8 cups. You have enough coffee grounds for 3 pots. 4 if you make it weak, which seems insulting but might be necessary. Sarah helps without being asked, moving around your cabin with ease, finding cups you didn't know you had in the back of your cupboard. She washes them in the basin while you tend the fire and try to remember if there's any protocol for serving coffee to people who could kill you with their pinky finger. "Yesterday," she says while working, "I was on my trial, my Dilzahe, 3 days alone with no supplies, no food, no water, no help, to prove I could survive, to prove I was ready." You're measuring coffee grounds with shaking hands. Ready for what? For life. For marriage. For responsibility. She sets a clean cup on the counter. "It is sacred. My people have done this for generations. The boys do it at 14, the girls at 17. It shows you can provide for yourself, that you understand the land, that you are not a child anymore." The coffee starts boiling. You pull it off the fire slightly, and Dalton interrupted that. He did more than interrupt. Her voice goes flat. He violated it, made it unsafe, turned a sacred test into something dangerous and shameful. By interfering, he suggested I could not complete it on my own merit, that I needed to be rescued or dominated or... She doesn't finish the sentence. You pour the first cups carefully. The coffee is strong enough to strip paint. "I didn't know any of that." "I know." She takes 2 cups and heads toward the door. "That is why my father trusts you. You did not help me because you understood our ways. You helped because you saw someone in trouble and could not walk away. That is more important than understanding." She pauses at the door. "To my people, that trial is everything. It is how we prove we are not weak, that we can survive in a world that wants us gone. When your people try to break that intentionally or not, they are trying to break us, to show we cannot even complete our own traditions safely." Suddenly, the 500 warriors make more sense. This wasn't just about protecting Sarah. It was about protecting the sacred, about showing that Apache traditions will be defended, that coming-of-age ceremonies are not optional cultural curiosities that white settlers can disrupt for entertainment. You follow her outside with more cups. The chief accepts his coffee with a nod. The translator takes one gratefully. Several warriors who've been standing in mourning positions for hours rotate down to accept cups, always maintaining the perimeter, never leaving gaps in the coverage. It's military precision applied to coffee service, which would be funny if it weren't so impressive and terrifying. Sarah stands beside her father, translating quietly. He sips the coffee, makes a face, it's very strong, and nods approvingly. He says it is terrible coffee, but made with honor. That is enough. You've never received a compliment that was simultaneously so insulting and so meaningful. The sun climbs higher. The coffee gets distributed in shifts. Your 3 pots serve maybe 40 warriors total, which is less than 10% of the force present. But nobody seems offended by the mathematical inadequacy. The message is sent. Hospitality offered, hospitality accepted. You are host, they are guests. Even in this bizarre, heavily armed standoff, the old forms are being observed. Now you just wait for Dalton to arrive and face the consequences of interrupting something he was too ignorant and cruel to respect. Chapter 18. The Son's Arrival. The sheriff returns with Dalton, who's trying very hard to look defiant and failing. When he sees the warriors, the blood drains from his face. The chief doesn't stand, doesn't need to. His presence sitting is more commanding than most men standing. Through the translator, he addresses Dalton directly. You attacked my daughter. You showed her disrespect. You used your father's authority to threaten someone who could not defend herself. Dalton tries to speak, but his voice cracks. His father puts a hand on his shoulder, whether for support or to keep him from saying something stupid, you can't tell. The chief continues. This man, he gestures to you, understood honor when he had no obligation to. You understood only power when you had every advantage. That is the difference between a man and a coward. They appear from the south road around mid-morning, riding slowly. The sheriff in front, Dalton beside him, the 12 deputies trailing behind like a funeral procession, which, given the circumstances, might not be far off. You can see Dalton from a distance, and even from here, his body language is all wrong. He's sitting too straight in his saddle, shoulders back, chin up, the posture of someone trying to project confidence they absolutely do not feel. It's the physical equivalent of whistling past a graveyard. Everyone can see through it, including probably Dalton himself. Then they get close enough to see the ridges clearly, to count or try to count the warriors, to understand the full scope of what they're riding into. Dalton's posture collapses like a puppet with cut strings. His shoulders hunch, his head drops slightly forward. The color drains from his face so fast you'd think someone opened a tap. Even from 50 yards away, you can see him swallow hard. Once, twice, like he's trying not to be sick. His horse feels the change in his rider and starts dancing sideways, nervous. Dalton has to work to control it, which he does badly, jerking the reins too hard. The horse tosses its head in protest. They stop at the property line. Nobody told them to stop, they just do, instinctively understanding that crossing onto your land right now would be entering a space where the normal rules don't apply, where the sheriff's authority is decorative at best. The chief remains seated on his paint horse, positioned perfectly to see everything. He hasn't moved in over an hour, just sitting there with the patience of a man who has all the time in the world and knows it. He could be carved from stone for all the emotion he's showing. But when his eyes fix on Dalton, something shifts. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. Assessment. The look a craftsman gives a piece of work that's been done wrong. Noting each flaw with professional disappointment, the translator begins speaking, his voice carrying across the morning air with perfect clarity. You attacked my daughter. You showed her disrespect. You used your father's authority to threaten someone who could not defend herself. Each sentence lands like a physical blow. Dalton flinches, visibly. His hands tighten on his reins until his knuckles go white. He opens his mouth whether to deny it, defend himself, or apologize. You'll never know, but what comes out is a squeak, literally a squeak. His voice cracks like he's 13 years old again, hormones doing what fear is doing now, stripping away any pretense of manhood. Chapter 19. The Punishment. The chief announces his terms through the translator. Dalton will publicly apologize to Sarah. He will give restitution, a fine horse, and supplies, and he is banned from Apache lands, which effectively means he can't travel most of the territory without risk. If he violates this, there will be no negotiation, only consequence. It's remarkably measured, considering he could have demanded much worse. The sheriff knows this. He nods stiffly. It will be done. Dalton, to his credit or perhaps his terror, does apologize. It's halting and clearly forced, but Sarah accepts it with grace. The chief speaks one more time. Let this be known. This man's ranch, he means yours, is sacred ground. Anyone who threatens him threatens my people. Anyone who helps him honors us. And just like that, you've become the most protected rancher in New Mexico territory. Also, possibly the most complicated. The terms are delivered in that same calm, measured tone the translator has been using all morning, like he's reading from a contract rather than pronouncing judgment on someone who could have been executed. The chief speaks, the translator converts, and the air seems to thicken with the weight of what's being decided. First, the apology. Dalton will apologize, publicly, to Sarah, right now, in front of 500 warriors, 12 deputies, his father, and you. There's no option to do it privately later, no opportunity to save face. This is the public accountability portion of the program. Dalton's mouth opens and closes a few times before sound comes out. He's looking at the ground, at his horse's mane, at anything except Sarah. His father's hand tightens on his shoulder, the universal parental gesture for do the thing or so help me. I apologize, Dalton finally manages. His voice is thin, strangled, for yesterday, for what I said, for... He trails off, apparently unable to enumerate all the things he's apologizing for without making this worse. Sarah stands straight, dignified, watching him struggle. When he finishes his pathetic attempt, she nods once. Accepted, she says simply. No elaboration, no forgiveness, no absolution. Just acknowledgement that an apology was offered, witnessed, and received. Second, restitution. The translator explains that Dalton will provide a horse, a good one, not some broken-down nag, and supplies, flour, coffee, ammunition, fabric, items of value. It's the frontier equivalent of a fine, except instead of money going to a court, resources go to the harmed party. Direct compensation, simple, old as human civilization itself. The sheriff nods agreement. He knows this could have been worse, could have been much worse, could have involved Dalton's actual life as payment. A horse and some supplies? That's mercy wearing the costume of justice. Third, banishment. Dalton is banned from Apache lands. The translator emphasizes lands in a way that makes clear how much territory that encompasses. Essentially everywhere that isn't a town or established ranch. Most of the hunting grounds, most of the travel routes, most of the territory, period. Dalton's face, already pale, goes ashen. He's beginning to understand that he's been effectively grounded by the largest military force in the region. He can stay in town, or he can risk traveling through spaces where he has no protection, and every Apache warrior has been told he's persona non grata. It's a prison without walls, a sentence that doesn't require guards because the entire landscape has become the guard. If he violates this, the translator adds, and there's no emotion in his voice at all, there will be no negotiation, only consequence. Translation: if we catch him on our lands, we kill him. No trial, no second chances, just enforcement of the terms he's about to agree to. The sheriff understands. It will be done, he says stiffly. Not, we agree, or, thank you. Just acknowledgement that he's received the terms and will comply. Because what choice does he have? Then the chief speaks again, longer this time, his eyes moving from Dalton to you. The translator turns, addressing the assembled witnesses, warriors, deputies, everyone present. Let this be known, this man's ranch. He gestures to you, to your property, to your modest 40 acres of suddenly very significant real estate, is sacred ground. Anyone who threatens him threatens my people. Anyone who helps him honors us. Sacred ground. The words echo across the valley. It's not metaphor. It's not exaggeration. By the laws of the Apache, enforced by the chief's authority and backed by 500 warriors, your property has just been designated as protected space. You are now untouchable. At least untouchable by anyone who values their life and doesn't want to start a war with the most powerful Apache chief in New Mexico territory. The protection is absolute. It's also a leash. You can't be neutral anymore, can't be invisible. You've been claimed by one side of a conflict, whether you wanted to be or not. The sheriff looks at you with an expression that's hard to read. Respect, resentment, fear, probably all three. You've just become someone he can't ignore and can't easily control. A new variable in his carefully managed territorial authority. Dalton won't even look at you. To him, you're the reason for all this humiliation. Never mind that he created this situation. Never mind that he's the one who attacked Sarah. In his mind, you're the villain who got him in trouble, not the person who prevented something worse. That's going to be a problem later. But later is later. Right now, the judgment is pronounced, the terms are set, and your life has fundamentally changed in ways you're only beginning to understand. Sacred ground, protected, honored, complicated. Welcome to your new reality, where giving someone water has made you a permanent fixture in the political landscape of the frontier. Chapter 20. The Alliance forms. After the public punishment, the chief invites you to sit with him. Through a combination of the translator and Sarah's help, you begin to understand the broader implications. The Apache have been pushed further and further into marginal lands. Conflicts with settlers are increasing. Both sides are tired. What happened yesterday, a settler defending an Apache woman, is unprecedented. It's a crack in the wall of mutual hostility. The chief is pragmatic. He knows his people can't defeat the U.S. Army forever, but he also knows the U.S. can't pacify the territory without endless bloodshed. Your ranch, your well, your simple act of decency, these have become symbols of a possible third way, a place where both sides can meet without violence. You didn't ask for this role, but you're in it now. The chief extends his hand. You take it. The alliance is sealed. The invitation comes as the sheriff and his humiliated son ride away, dust trailing behind them like a visible representation of damaged pride. The chief dismounts finally and gestures toward your porch. It's not a request exactly, more like a polite indication that you're about to have a conversation whether you're ready for it or not. You grab two somewhat clean chairs from inside your cabin, setting them in the shade of your porch overhang. The chief sits with the easy grace of someone whose body still works the way it's supposed to despite decades of use. You sit with the creaking joints of someone who hasn't slept and whose nervous system is running on fumes and terror. Sarah positions herself between you, ready to translate alongside the official translator. Two sources of interpretation, which suggests this conversation is important enough that accuracy matters more than efficiency. The chief speaks, and Sarah translates, her voice softer than the translator's formal tone. My father says you look like you've seen a ghost. He asks if you're well. Didn't sleep, you repeat for what feels like the 100th time today. Army outside. The chief's lips quirk slightly, almost a smile. He responds, and Sarah translates. He says a wise man loses sleep over real threats. A fool sleeps soundly in danger. You are not a fool. It's the nicest way anyone's ever called you paranoid. The chief continues, his tone becoming more serious. Sarah translates in segments, giving you time to absorb each piece. 50 years ago, my father's father hunted these lands. Buffalo, deer, elk. There were no fences, no towns, just people living as they had for generations beyond counting. You nod, knowing where this is going, but letting him continue. Then your people came, first in small numbers. We traded. Sometimes we fought, but mostly we avoided each other. There was room. He pauses. But your people are like water finding cracks in stone, always more, always pushing. The land that was ours became land we shared, then land we were allowed to use. Now land we're forbidden from entirely. The translator adds context. The treaties your government makes, they break. The lines they draw, they move. Every year, less land. Every year, more restrictions. Every year, more of our young people die fighting battles we cannot win. It's history, in abstract terms. Reading about it in a newspaper is different from hearing it from someone who's lived it, who's watched his world shrink decade by decade. But we are still here. The chief continues through Sarah. Still strong, still able to defend what remains. Your army knows this. They've tried to force us into reservations. Some bands have gone. Some have been destroyed. He leans forward slightly. Here is the truth both sides understand but will not speak. We cannot defeat your army. You have too many men, too many supplies, too much will to expand. But you cannot defeat us without costs so high your people will lose stomach for it. We know this land. We can fight for years, maybe decades. Your soldiers will die. Your settlements will burn. Your government will spend gold and blood and gain nothing but bodies. It's the most honest, strategic assessment you've ever heard. No bravado, no false hope, just cold calculation delivered with the certainty of someone who's thought this through completely. So we arrive at stalemate, the translator adds. Violence that benefits no one. Loss on both sides. Until yesterday. Sarah takes over the translation fully now, her voice carrying weight. A white man defended an Apache woman, risked his life, expected nothing. That has never happened in my father's memory. Not once. It changes the story we tell ourselves about your people. It suggests that perhaps not all settlers are enemies, that perhaps there is another way. The chief reaches into a leather pouch at his belt and pulls out something wrapped in cloth. He unwraps it carefully, a carved pipe. Beautiful work, inlaid with turquoise. He doesn't light it, just holds it, turning it in his hands while he speaks. Sarah translates. My father says your ranch can become neutral ground, a place where both sides can come for water without fear, where grievances can be aired without weapons, where we remember that before we are Apache or white, we are people trying to survive in a hard land. We have an Apache. We are people. The weight of what he's proposing settles over you like a physical thing. He's not just talking about your property. He's talking about creating a new kind of space in a territory where such spaces don't exist. An embassy without official recognition. A peace zone without government sanction. I'm just a rancher, you say, which is becoming your default response to overwhelming responsibility. I don't know anything about diplomacy or politics or, you know about water, Sarah interrupts, speaking for herself now. You know that thirsty people need to drink. That's all this is, except instead of water, we're talking about peace. And instead of one person, we're talking about two peoples who are very, very thirsty for something other than blood. The chief sets the pipe down carefully on the porch railing. He stands, and you stand with him. He extends his hand, not in the white man's handshake exactly, but close enough that the meaning is clear. You take it. His grip is firm, weathered, warm. The grip of someone sealing an agreement that matters. The alliance is formed. The neutral ground is established. You are now officially a bridge between two worlds that have been trying to destroy each other for decades. No pressure at all. Chapter 21. The warriors depart. As the sun climbs toward noon, the warriors begin to withdraw. It's done in perfect order, not a retreat, a choreographed demonstration of discipline. They leave as they came, in silence, melting back into the landscape. Within an hour, the ridges are empty again. Only the chief, Sarah, and the translator remain for a final conversation. The chief gives you a gift, a necklace of bear claws and turquoise, a mark of honor among his people. The translator says, and our people will know you are under protection. Sarah adds, quieter, and the settlers will know you've chosen a side. She's right. This necklace is a target as much as a shield. But you put it on anyway because turning back isn't an option anymore. The chief mounts his horse, nods once, and rides off. Sarah lingers. You changed things yesterday, she says. I just gave someone water, you reply. She smiles. Exactly. The withdrawal starts on the eastern ridge. You don't see a signal, but suddenly warriors are mounting horses that were already saddled, moving in coordinated groups. Not all at once, that would be chaos. In waves. Organized. Each group waits for the one before it to clear out before moving. It's like watching water drain from a basin. Smooth, inevitable, orderly. Within minutes, the eastern ridge is clear. Then the southern positions start moving. Then the western ridge. They're pulling back in sequence, maintaining coverage until the last moment, ensuring that at no point is your ranch actually vulnerable. Even in departure, they're protecting you. The silence is remarkable. 500 mounted warriors leaving, and the loudest sound is the wind moving through sagebrush. No shouting, no confusion, no stragglers trying to catch up. Just professional military movement executed with precision that would make a U.S. Army officer weep with envy. You watch from your porch, coffee cup in hand, your fourth or fifth cup today. You've lost count as the ridges that were lined with warriors an hour ago become empty landscape again. It's disorienting, like waking from a dream, except the dream was real and left hoofprints everywhere. Within an hour, they're gone, just vanished back into the territory like they were never there. Except you know they were. Your horses know. The ground knows. Churned up by hundreds of hooves, the chief remains, along with Sarah and the translator. The final conversation, the closing ceremony of whatever this morning has been. The chief reaches into his pouch again, seems like that thing holds half his possessions, and pulls out something that makes your breath catch. A necklace, not decorative, ceremonial. Bear claws, 5 of them, each the size of your thumb, alternating with chunks of turquoise that catch the light like pieces of sky. The whole thing is strung on sinew, tied with intricate knots that probably have meaning you don't understand. He holds it out, not offering it, presenting it. There's a difference. The translator speaks. Wear this, and our people will know you are under protection. You are marked as friend, as ally, as one who has earned trust. You take it carefully. It's heavier than you expected. The bear claws are smooth, polished from handling. The turquoise is cool against your palm. This isn't something made yesterday. This is old, important, the kind of thing that gets passed down through families. I can't accept this. You start, because it feels too valuable, too significant. The chief cuts you off with a gesture, through the translator. You already have. The moment you stood between my daughter and danger, you accepted. This is just the visible symbol of what already exists. Sarah steps closer, her voice quiet enough that only you can hear. And the settlers will know you've chosen a side. She's right. You've seen enough of frontier politics to know that visible symbols matter. This necklace announces your allegiance louder than words ever could. Every settler who sees it will know you've aligned with the Apache. Some will understand. Most won't. Some will see you as a traitor. Others as dangerously naive. None will see you as neutral anymore. But Sarah's already said it. Turning back isn't an option. The choice was made yesterday at the well. Everything since has just been the consequences playing out. You put the necklace on. The bear claws rest heavy against your chest. The turquoise catches sunlight. You look down at it, then back up at the chief. He nods once, approval, or maybe just acknowledgement. Then he mounts his paint horse with the ease of someone who's been doing it for 60 years. The translator mounts as well. The chief speaks one last time, and the translator converts. You will see us again, when you need us, when we need you. This is not ending. This is beginning. Then he rides north, the translator following. Within minutes, their shapes on the horizon, then they're gone. Sarah remains, standing in your yard, watching her father disappear. When he's out of sight, she turns to you. You changed things yesterday, she says. You look down at the necklace, at your modest ranch, at the empty ridges where an army stood. I just gave someone water. She smiles, a real smile this time. Not the careful diplomatic one she's been wearing all morning. Exactly. And somehow, in that word, you understand what she means. You didn't try to change anything. You didn't have a plan or a political agenda. You just saw someone who needed help and helped them. That simplicity, that basic human decency was more powerful than any strategy because it was real. She mounts her horse, the same one she rode yesterday when she carried water from your well. "My father likes you," she says. "He thinks you're either very brave or very stupid. What do you think?" "I think," she says, turning her horse north, "that brave and stupid often look the same until enough time passes to tell the difference. Then she's riding away too, following her father's path, leaving you alone on your porch with a necklace that weighs more than its physical materials, and the certainty that your life has irrevocably changed. The sun is directly overhead now. The morning's drama feels both recent and distant, like something that happened years ago and also 5 minutes ago. Your ranch is quiet again, just you, your horses, and your one-eyed chicken resuming her reign of terror. Except it's not the same quiet as before. It's the quiet of someone who knows they're being watched, who knows their actions matter now, who understands that the next time someone asks for water, the answer will ripple further than just one thirsty person. You touch the bare claws at your chest. All of the above. Welcome to your new life. Chapter 22. The Aftermath in Town. When you ride into town the next day, the atmosphere has changed. Everyone knows what happened. The story has grown in the telling. By some accounts, you personally negotiated a peace treaty while surrounded by 1,000 warriors. The truth is simpler but somehow more powerful. You were decent to someone, and it mattered. The sheriff won't meet your eyes. Dalton is nowhere to be seen. Other ranchers look at you with a mixture of respect and concern. You're either brave or crazy, possibly both. The storekeeper offers you credit, saying, "Any man the Apache respect is good for his debts." At the saloon, conversations stop when you enter. Someone eventually asks what it was like, having that many warriors surrounding you. Terrifying. You answer honestly. But also, right. It felt right. They don't quite know what to make of that. Neither do you. Really. You ride into Redemption mid-morning, and the first thing you notice is that people are noticing you. Before yesterday, you were furniture. Background: the nobody rancher from the property on the edge of nowhere. People looked past you the way you look past fence posts. Not today. Today, heads turn. Conversations pause mid-sentence. A woman actually drops her basket of vegetables, then stares at you instead of picking them up. You've become interesting, which on the frontier is rarely a good thing. The necklace probably isn't helping. Bear claws and turquoise are not subtle accessories. They catch the light like a signal fire broadcasting, "This man has made choices," to anyone with functioning eyeballs. You hitch your horse outside the general store and hear the whispers start immediately. Surrounded by 1,000 Apache. Negotiated for hours while sitting on a powder keg. The chief himself bowed to him. Blood oath. "I heard." Banned the sheriff's son from half the territory. The gossip is like a game of telephone played by people who've been drinking since breakfast. Each retelling adds details that didn't exist. By tomorrow, you'll probably have fought off a grizzly bear while juggling flaming torches and reciting Shakespeare. The truth that you gave someone water and then stood awkwardly while politics happened around you is apparently too boring to repeat accurately. You push open the door to the general store. The bell above the door rings, cheerful and oblivious to tension. Mr. Patterson, the storekeeper, looks up from his ledger. His eyes widen slightly when he sees the necklace. "Heard you had visitors," he says carefully, like he's navigating a conversation through a minefield. "Few." You agree. Heard it was significant. Could say that. He sets down his pencil, studies you for a long moment. Then, need to settle your account today? You'd come prepared to pay you owe him for seed and supplies from last month. Yes, sir. Got money. He waves a hand, cutting you off. Put it on credit. Any man the Apache respect is good for his debts. Figure if you can negotiate with a war chief, you can probably handle paying me back. It's meant as a compliment. It lands like responsibility. More weight on shoulders, already carrying too much. You thank him, purchase what you need, coffee, flour, ammunition for hunting, and step back outside into sunlight that feels judgmental. The sheriff is across the street, standing outside his office. He sees you, you see him, see you. He turns and walks inside without acknowledgement. It's the cut direct, the deliberate snub. He's making clear that whatever happened yesterday doesn't make you friends. Fair enough. You weren't expecting friendship, but the fact that the sheriff, the man who runs this town, won't even make eye contact with you speaks volumes about how the power dynamics have shifted. Dalton is nowhere visible, probably inside somewhere, nursing his humiliation and plotting revenge that his father will have to talk him out of. Or not. Time will tell whether the lesson took or just made him angrier. You head to the saloon because you need a drink and possibly several more after that. The moment you push through the swinging doors, the noise cuts off like someone threw a switch. Every conversation stops. Every head turns. It's like being back in school and walking into class late. Except instead of annoyed teenagers, it's weathered ranchers and cowboys in the town drunk who's somehow still conscious at 11 in the morning. You walk to the bar. Your boots on the wooden floor are the loudest sound in the room. The bartender pours whiskey without asking what you want. You drink it without tasting it. Eventually, because someone always has to break uncomfortable silences, a rancher named Caldwell speaks up. The same one who occasionally steals water from your well without asking. What was it like, he asks, having that many warriors surrounding you? Everyone leans in slightly. This is what they actually want to know. Not the politics, not the implications, just the experience. What it felt like. You consider lying, making it sound heroic or strategic or like you had any control over the situation. But exhaustion and whiskey make you honest. Terrifying, you say, then because it's true, but also right. It felt right. The silence that follows is different. Confused. They expected bravado or fear. Not this complicated middle ground where you're admitting both terror and correctness existed simultaneously. Right how? Caldwell presses. You touch the bear claws at your chest. Someone needed help. I helped. Everything that followed felt like, I don't know, like the world working the way it should. Scary as hell, but correct. They don't know what to make of that. You can see it in their faces. You're not fitting into the categories they understand, hero, traitor, fool. You're something else, something undefined. Neither do you, really. You're figuring this out as you go, same as everyone else. The conversations resume eventually, quieter now. You finish your drink, someone buys you another. A rancher claps you on the shoulder, approval or warning. You're not sure which. You ride home in the afternoon heat, carrying supplies and questions and the weight of a necklace that's redefined your entire existence. The frontier is changing. You're changing with it. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen. Chapter 23. The New Reality. Life settles into a new pattern, Apache families occasionally stop at your well, always courteous, often bringing small gifts. You learn bits of their language. They teach you signs and protocols. The U.S. Army visits once, just checking on you. But they're really trying to figure out your relationship with the tribe. You keep it simple. I helped someone. They appreciated it. We're neighbors now. Neighboring 500 warriors changes the local power dynamics considerably. Disputes that might have escalated to violence now get talked through because nobody wants to upset the balance. Your ranch becomes neutral ground, a place where both sides can meet. It's exhausting being a diplomatic bridge, but it's also purposeful in a way your life wasn't before. You're not just surviving anymore. You're building something new. The first Apache family arrives 3 days after the warriors departed. A woman with 2 children, approaching cautiously, hands visible. You're at the well, where else? And you simply nod and gesture that they're welcome to water. She fills her containers without speaking, but before leaving, she sets down a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, dried berries and some kind of root vegetable you don't recognize. It's not payment, exactly. More like acknowledgement. Like she's saying, we see the exchange without making it transactional. You learn to expect these visits. Sometimes it's families, sometimes hunters passing through. Always courteous, always careful. They're testing the arrangement, making sure the chief's declaration holds in practice, not just in theory. One morning, an older Apache man arrives and spends 20 minutes teaching you signs, hand signals for friend, water, safe, danger. Basic vocabulary for communication across language barriers. You practice until your fingers cramp, trying to get the gestures right. He corrects you patiently, the way you'd teach a child, until you can signal, water here, you are welcome, without looking like you're swatting flies. You learn words too. Shik means friend, to means water, ehe, he means thank you. Your pronunciation is atrocious, but they appreciate the effort. You're trying to meet them halfway, linguistically speaking, which matters more than getting the accent perfect. The U.S. Army visits on a Tuesday. A lieutenant and 4 soldiers, ostensibly on routine patrol, except there's nothing routine about them riding directly to your ranch and asking detailed questions about recent activities in the area. The lieutenant is young, maybe 25, with the crisp uniform of someone who hasn't been in the territory long enough for the dust to permanently stain everything he owns. He's polite but pointed. We heard you had visitors last week. Folks stop by for water sometimes, you reply, deliberately vague. Folks, right. He looks at your necklace. The bear claws catch afternoon light. That's Apache craftsmanship. Gift from a neighbor. He writes something in a small notebook. And these neighbors? They come by often? Often as anyone else. The lieutenant's jaw tightens. He's trying to figure out if you're being deliberately obtuse or genuinely don't understand that you're supposed to report Apache movements to military authorities. You understand perfectly. You're just choosing not to. If you see anything concerning, he says carefully, it's your duty as a citizen to report it. Haven't seen anything concerning, you reply. Just thirsty people getting water. He leaves frustrated. And you know this won't be the last visit. The Army is trying to map Apache movements, and you've just declared yourself an unreliable source. That's going to be a problem for someone, eventually. But here's what's changed. Disputes that would have turned violent now get talked through. 2 weeks after your dramatic morning, a rancher has a disagreement with Apache hunters over grazing land. Instead of shooting first and burying bodies later, someone suggests, take it to the water rancher's place. So they do. They show up at your ranch, 3 ranchers on one side, 4 Apache men on the other, and basically use your porch as an impromptu courthouse. You don't mediate exactly. You just provide neutral ground and coffee while they work it out themselves. The presence of the space itself, territory that neither side can claim, forces conversation instead of violence. It's exhausting. You didn't sign up to be a diplomatic bridge. You just wanted to raise cattle and not die of thirst. But here you are, learning Apache hand signs and explaining to U.S. Army lieutenants why you're not going to spy on your neighbors. The exhaustion is real, but so is the purpose. For the first time since you bought this property, you're not just surviving day to day, you're part of something larger. A small experiment in whether people can share space without killing each other. It's not grand. It's not glorious. It's mostly just coffee and water and conversations in broken English and worse, Apache. But it's something. It's more than you had before. It's building towards something new, even if you're not sure what that something is yet. Your one-eyed chicken still terrorizes her subordinates. Your horses still judge your decisions. The well still produces clean water. But now those simple facts are part of a larger story, one about ordinary resources becoming shared space, about grudges giving way to pragmatism, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there's another way forward besides endless violence. You're not just a rancher anymore. You're neutral ground. It's terrifying and purposeful and completely unsustainable and somehow working anyway. Welcome to the new reality, where your biggest daily question isn't, will I survive, but how many people am I making coffee for today? Progress, probably. Chapter 24. Sarah's visits. Sarah comes by occasionally, sometimes with messages from her father, sometimes just to talk. She's teaching you about her people's ways, their history on this land, their perspectives on the changes sweeping through. In return, you share what you know about the settlers' desperation, their own displacement from back east, their fear of the unknown. Neither of you pretend your people's conflicts are simple or easily resolved, but you're both trying to understand across the divide. One evening, sitting on your porch watching the sunset, she says, "My father thinks you could be a bridge, someone both sides can trust." "I'm just a rancher," you protest. "No," she says. "You're the man who chose kindness when violence was easier. That's rare. That's valuable. Don't waste it." You think about that long after she rides away. Her visits don't follow a pattern. Sometimes it's weekly. Sometimes you don't see her for 3 weeks. She arrives when she arrives, always from the north, always alone, always moving with that same easy confidence that says she knows exactly where she is and how to survive it. Sometimes she brings messages. "My father says there are raiders near the southern boundary. Not Apache. Comancheros, maybe. Be careful." Or, "The council met. They're concerned about the railroad surveyors. They're mapping through sacred sites." Information that helps you understand the landscape you're living in, not just the physical terrain, but the political one. But mostly, she just talks and listens, teaching you things you'd never learn otherwise. She explains how her people view the land not as property to be owned, but as a relationship to be maintained. You own land the way you own your children, which is to say, you don't. You're responsible for it. You're in relationship with it. but it's not yours to destroy or sell. It's a concept that breaks your brain a little. You have a deed, a piece of paper that says, "This 40 acres belongs to you," signed by a territorial official who's never set foot here. But that paper means nothing to someone who sees the land as something you belong to, not something that belongs to you. In return, you try to explain the settlers, the desperation that drives them. "They're not all evil," you say one afternoon, surprising yourself with the defensiveness in your voice. "Most of them are just desperate. They lost everything back east. War, or debt, or factory closures. They come here because it's the last place left where they might build something." Sarah listens without judgment. "Desperation makes people dangerous," she observes. "When you're drowning, you'll pull down anyone trying to help you." "Yeah, you agree. That's pretty accurate, actually." She tells you about the treaties, how many have been signed and broken, how the boundaries keep shifting west, always west, pushing her people into smaller and smaller spaces. Your government promises protection, then sends soldiers to enforce removal, promises food, then delivers spoiled meat, promises schools, then takes children and beats the Apache out of them. It's uncomfortable, hearing it laid out like that. You want to defend your people, your government, but the facts are facts. The pattern is clear. "We're not simple victims," she adds, reading your discomfort. "We've raided, we've killed, we've taken revenge that harmed innocents. Both sides have blood on their hands. But one side also has broken every promise it ever made. You don't have an answer for that. So you sit in silence, which seems more honest than empty words. One evening, as the sun turns the western sky into layers of orange and purple and pink, she says something that's been building for weeks. "My father thinks you could be a bridge, someone both sides can trust." You nearly laugh. "I'm just a rancher." "No." Her voice is firm. "You're the man who chose kindness when violence was easier. That's rare. That's valuable. Don't waste it." The words hit different than you expect. Not flattering, not encouraging, just true, stated as observable fact. She mounts her horse, preparing to leave. The sunset backlights her, turning her into a silhouette against the sky. Most people spend their whole lives trying not to matter, trying to stay small and safe and unnoticed. You didn't choose to matter, but you do now. The question is what you're going to do with it. Then she's riding north, her horse's hoofbeats fading into the evening quiet. You sit on your porch long after she's gone, watching stars appear one by one. The bear claws are heavy against your chest. Your coffee has gone cold in your cup. You think about bridges, how they connect things that would otherwise be separate, how they're fixed in place, can't move, can't retreat, just have to stand there and bear weight. How they get walked on by everyone and belong to no one. It's not a comfortable metaphor, but it might be an accurate one. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote calls. Another answers. They're talking to each other in language you don't understand, coordinating something you can't see, kind of like your life now. You finish your cold coffee and head inside. Tomorrow you'll draw water and tend horses and probably mediate another dispute between people who should be able to work it out themselves but can't because decades of violence have destroyed the ability to trust. It's exhausting, it's purposeful, it's terrifying, and apparently, according to someone who has no reason to lie to you, it's valuable. "Don't waste it," she said. You fall asleep thinking about that. About what it means to not waste something you never asked for but somehow received anyway. about responsibility that arrives disguised as kindness, about bridges that can't move but somehow change everything. Chapter 25. The Legend Begins. Stories spread across the territory. The rancher who faced down the sheriff's son, who earned the respect of the Apache, who turned his property into a no-man's land that somehow became everyone's land. Some stories are accurate, many aren't. You're credited with wisdom you don't possess, courage you certainly felt absent of in the moment, and diplomatic skills you definitely lack. But the legend serves a purpose bigger than truth. It gives people hope that coexistence might be possible, that the cycle of violence isn't inevitable, that one person's choice can matter. You never set out to be a legend. You just gave water to someone who needed it and stood up to a bully. But sometimes that's how legends start, not with grand gestures, but with small acts of human decency in a world that's forgotten how to be decent. As you fall asleep tonight, know that the frontier was built on violence, but it was sustained by people who chose, against all odds, to be kind. By the time the stories reach Santa Fe, you've somehow negotiated a peace treaty that ended decades of war. In Denver, you're described as a former cavalry officer who speaks fluent Apache and has been adopted into the tribe. A newspaper in San Francisco publishes an illustration of you completely inaccurate, showing a tall man with a magnificent beard. You definitely don't have standing between two armies with your hands raised like Moses, parting the Red Sea. The truth is so much simpler and so much better. You gave someone water. You told 3 drunk men to leave. That's it. That's the entire heroic origin story. No brilliant strategy, no grand plan. Just basic human decency executed in a moment when it would have been easier to look away. But truth and legend have never been good friends. Truth is complicated and uncomfortable and doesn't fit neatly into the stories people want to tell. Legend is smooth, inspiring, something you can hold on to when everything else feels uncertain. And right now, in 1880s New Mexico territory, people need something to hold on to. Settlers heading west ask about you in towns along the trail. Is it true there's a rancher who made peace with the Apache? They're looking for hope, for evidence that this harsh land might allow something other than endless conflict. You become their proof of concept, whether you want to be or not. The Apache tells stories too, about the white man with the good water who stood up to evil when he had no reason to, about how honor can exist even among those who take what isn't theirs, about bridges between worlds. Their stories are quieter, less dramatic, but somehow more accurate. They understand that what you did wasn't extraordinary in intent, only in execution, and that's what made it matter. The sun sets on your ranch one more time. Your horses are fed. Your chickens, still ruled by their one-eyed tyrant, are secured for the night. The well stands patient and reliable. The thing that started all of this, by simply existing and providing what everyone needs to survive. You sit on your porch, bare claws resting heavy against your chest, and watch stars emerge one by one. Somewhere out there, people are telling stories about you, some true, some wildly false, all of them growing larger with each retelling. But here, alone with the cooling desert air and the sound of wind moving through sage, you're just you. The person who gave someone water because they were thirsty, who stood between danger and someone vulnerable because walking away felt wrong, who said no to cruelty when yes would have been so much easier. That's all. That's everything. The frontier was built on violence treaties written in blood, land taken by force, promises broken before the ink dried. That's the history everyone knows. But it was sustained by people nobody remembers. The ones who shared water, who helped neighbors they disagreed with, who chose conversation over confrontation, who built small bridges in a landscape of division. Those people didn't get statues or their names in history books. They just lived their lives trying to be decent in indecent times. And somehow, quietly, without fanfare or recognition, they held the world together. You're one of them now. Not a hero, not a saint, not a brilliant diplomat, just a person who gave someone water, and it turned out that was enough to change everything. So tonight, as you drift off in your own bed, no scorpions, no rattlesnakes, no armed standoffs, just clean sheets and a locked door and the miracle of indoor plumbing. Think about that rancher on the edge of everything, the one who didn't set out to be a legend but became one anyway, simply by choosing kindness when cruelty was easier. Think about how small acts ripple outward in ways you can't predict. How one cup of water can reshape the power dynamics of an entire territory. How standing up for someone can create space for others to do the same. The world still needs bridges. It still needs people who choose decency over fear. It still needs those willing to share what they have with those who need it, regardless of whose side they're on or what flag they fly. You don't need 500 warriors backing you up. You don't need a dramatic confrontation or a legendary reputation. You just need to see someone who needs help and decide that their need matters more than your comfort. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person, one moment, one choice. The rest is just water finding its way downhill, following the path of least resistance, carving canyons out of stone one drop at a time. Sleep well, knowing that kindness is more powerful than violence, that decency outlasts cruelty, and that somewhere in the New Mexico territory of 1880, a man with a well and a necklace of bear claws is still offering water to anyone who's thirsty. No questions asked, no sides chosen, just water, freely given, because that's what decent people do. And sometimes, just sometimes, that changes everything. Good night.